Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Time for another weekend chat on all things Konmari, craft roomy, storagey. So something I wanted to discuss today was this general feeling of letdown that I got after I felt like I was done decluttering. And I wanted to bring this up because I think that it's very common. I think a lot of people kind of get that. You get this high from getting rid of stuff and seeing the difference that you've made in your space, and then you start to get used to it, and then you look around and you're like, oh, what a dump. You know, you get used to it and you don't realize how far you've come. So that's why I always tell people, take photos, you know, before, so that you can look at those, you know, when you're done. If you ever feel discouraged or you feel like you haven't made a difference. I wish I had taken photos. Luckily I have tons of old videos I can look through if I ever, you know, feel like, oh, I haven't made any difference. And it's like, how could I have taken truckloads and truckloads and truckloads of stuff out of my house and still feel like it's a dump? You still feel like I have so much stuff. And then I found out about this principle called the Hedonic Treadmill, or Hedonic adaptation. And what this means basically is that we all have a personal kind of equilibrium or kind of level of happiness. And good things can happen to spike it, or we could have accomplishments that spike it, but then eventually we come back down to that kind of that middle ground. Just like we could have something very misfortunate happened to us and we could spike down, but then we're eventually going to rise back up to that level of equilibrium. And they did a study of 20 people that had won like millions of dollars or more in the lottery, and they tracked their happiness. They asked them how happy were they before they won the money, how happy were they right then when they won the money, and then they followed up with them a year later and asked them how happy were they currently, compared to like when they won the money and before they won the money. And most of them were at the level of happiness that they were at before they won the money. Some were a little bit lower because the money gave them extra stresses, like people badgering them for money, or them not knowing what to do with it, or confusion or whatnot. But generally, pretty much everybody was at that level of happiness that they were at the beginning before they ever won the money. They also studied 20 people that had been paralyzed in accidents. They asked them, because I guess they interviewed people right after that, either the good fortune or the bad fortune happened, and they asked them how happy were they before the accident, how happy were they after the accident, and then they followed up with them a year later and asked them how happy were they, and most of them had risen up to that same base level of happiness that they were before they ever had the accident. So I guess it's good and bad. Our bodies want to, or our minds want us to be at a certain even keel most of the time, but it can also lead us to be very discontent when things are going good, but they're not quite going as good as we think they ought to be. So I think the more we are aware of the way our brains work, the more we can kind of combat things. Now, generally, you can buy something and it can give you a rush. Say you go and you buy a new car and you get this big rush and it's great and it's awesome. It's so much better than that crappy old car you had, and you're driving around, you're feeling great, and then a year or so later, you're used to it. It's the same old car you've been driving for a year, then you see a new car. Oh, if only I had that car, I'd be happier. So if you know about this principle, you can kind of catch yourself in your tracks a little bit. It could be craft spending. It could be like, oh, that water, I want that set of watercolors. Buy the set of watercolors, you're happy for a couple weeks, and you're like, oh, I want that set of watercolors. You know, if you identify these feelings, you can kind of realize why you're feeling the way you are, realize why you're getting that shopper's high, and then kind of correct before you go into debt. Keep wanting to get the next thing that you think is going to make you happy. I'm sorry I'm not more well-spoken about this. I know I sound really, really chopped up, but I'm trying to just get it out there as I'm thinking about it. And the other thing is, you know, you could be decluttering and you could be getting rid of stuff, getting rid of stuff, getting rid of stuff, getting rid of stuff, and you've gotten rid of everything you don't want. You've gotten rid of everything that doesn't spark joy. You're only keeping the things you love and need. You could be very tempted just to pitch stuff because you want that spark of like, yeah, I see an empty shelf. And I think that's when you get in that situation where you could regret getting rid of things. I mean, I don't know, not necessarily. I've never gotten to that point where I'm just down to the bare minimum and I'm, you know, regretting getting rid of things. But I really think that could happen if you get in this kind of addictive mindset, like, I just want a quick win. I just want to, you know, I just want a spark, you know? So I just think it's important to identify these problems to keep us from either, you know, spending, looking for that next high, or getting rid of compulsively looking for that quick win. So just kind of keep in mind. Now, there are some things you can purchase that will make you stay happier longer. That would be experience purchases, maybe going on a trip, because then after you come back from the trip, even if things went terribly wrong, you're still going to have fun talking about the things that went terribly wrong when you get back home. That's going to bring that enjoyment, and of course the more distance between you and that terrible thing that happened on your vacation goes by, the funnier it's going to become, and the more valuable that experience is going to become. Also, learning something new will keep you happier longer, and that's not something you have to spend money on. You could watch a YouTube video and learn something new, put it to practice. You could go, if say you always wanted to learn how to, you know, frame something, build a shed or something, you'd go build a shed. I mean, obviously it would cost you some money in materials and whatnot, but you could learn it, or you could volunteer for Habitat for Humanity and help them build and learn something, and that's going to stay with you. You're always going to have it, and your happiness, it's not going to be so short-lived. You're going to experience more joy from that. Another thing that spending money can give you joy on is donating to charity. If you don't have the extra money to donate to charity, volunteer at your local library, volunteer at an animal shelter, volunteer at a cause that means something for you. And that, I think also with the fact of being involved with other people, is going to boost your mood and make you feel happier. And I think also the more things that we have that engage both sides of our brain, the less that we're going to be sitting around anxious and worrying and depressed and you know, fretting over things because our mind is active. I know my baseline is pretty happy, but it is also an undercurrent of anxiety. It's always been that way. I always would find something to worry about. So if I am doing art, or I am doing something creative, or even if I'm decluttering for some crazy reason, probably because I'm usually listening to a podcast or the radio or something, I don't feel that anxiety. I'm in the moment. I'm present. Rather than worrying about things that have yet to pass, I am present and I am just enjoying what I'm doing right now. So there's another reason why you should create art. Just don't go into debt buying art supplies, I guess, or filling up your house with stuff that you're not going to use. By also using the things you already have, they become more valuable and more cherished, and you appreciate them more. So having like 1 or 2 watercolor sets, I know, pot calling the kettle black here, that you really love will bring you more joy than having 50 that you don't really appreciate. So there's a little food for thought on your weekend. I hope you found it helpful. There was a really interesting short animated version. I'll try to link it in the video description. It was a TED Talk, well, not a TED Talk, but it was from the TED franchise company, whatever. They did a very brief explanation of the Hedonic Treadmill and Hedonic adaptation. So if you want to learn more, you can check that out. There's also been longer videos, TED Talks about those if you want to find out a little bit more about that. I thought it was really interesting that our bodies want to maintain that equilibrium, and they don't want us too happy and they don't want us too depressed. They want us right in the middle, nice and even keel. So it's kind of nice that our physiology tries to do that. It's just kind of like a bummer when you've done so much work to like declutter and then you're just feeling like I haven't done anything. But I think we all get that way. I mean, whether it's, you know, you have fitness goals or weight loss goals and you know, you're losing a lot of weight, then you plateau and then you're like, oh, why bother? I haven't made any progress. You are making progress, and you know, future you is going to thank you for whatever you learn, whatever you do to better yourself. You know, so just do stuff today that'll make future you say thanks, I guess. I know it's random. It's my random weekend Konmari chat. I haven't really decluttered anything new this week, but well, we'll see what I'm up to next week, I guess. Just I'm maintaining my equal keel. I am the hedonic adaptation of decluttering this week, I guess. I'm even keel. That's good. That's, I guess. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Have you experienced this, like you've accomplished something and then it feels like you haven't done a thing? How have you combated it? And do you resonate with any of this stuff? Is it any of it is it ringing a bell? Does it sound familiar? Let me know in the comments below. I love to hear your thoughts, and I love the conversations that pop up after each of these videos every week. So thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.